Hello and welcome. My name is Sarah and today I'm going to show you how to add an end state or multiple end states to your game in Unity. So this is really meant to be the culminating tutorial after you've done basically everything else for your game up to this point. You should have probably player movement, some kind of hazard or enemies, if you're going to plan to have an ending when you die, possibly a score system if you're planning to have a way to win when you reach a certain score. You may want to have doors in your game if you want to be able to win when you reach a certain exit, and all those things have been covered in previous tutorials. So what I'm going to be showing you here is just the very last kind of capstone on top of everything you've done so far. So I'm going to show you how to do basically 4 different types of endings, how to do an ending for whenever you run out of health, how to do an ending for if you had a time limit on your game or on your level, how to add an ending for if you reach a certain score, and how to add an ending whenever you reach a certain object, when you touch an object, which basically acts like a door, which is essentially we've already done before, and so that one will be very short. Finally, at the very end of this tutorial, I will show you how to add a button and basically how to set up an end screen to display your score if you have one, and how to add a button there that would take you back to the start. And you can also use this exact same logic to make a title screen with a button that takes you to the first level. So this also lets you set up a title screen. Why did we leave title screen to the end? Because it is the easiest and least important part of your game, especially if you're making a game very quickly for something like a game jam. A title screen is your least important aspect. Leave it till the end. If you don't plan to use a death state, you still should probably start with part 1, as I'm just about to begin, because we will build on that for later sections, so you really don't want to skip ahead. Okay, so what should you already have? Unity, your basically finished project, aside from end states, which really needs to have your player movements and some kind of enemies or scoring system or whatever you want to lead towards this end state. So let's start off by talking about an end state from running out of health, from dying. So our plan here is to think of this in terms of conditions and actions, just like I always do in my tutorials. So our condition here is when the player runs out of health, we want to do something. So when their health reaches 0, essentially when some variable reaches 0. And the action we want to take is to load a scene. And this could be a losing scene, it could be reloading the current scene, or it could be going back to the first level. It's up to you how you set that up. I'll show you how to do it based on a losing scene, but you may wish to set up this so that you reload the current level or just go directly back to the first level. You can still use the exact same code. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, step 1, we need to open up our script where we have the logic for the player dying. And for me, and if you were following my tutorials, that will be the player health script. If you're using your own code, that's fine. You just need to find the place where your player, you handle your player death. And in our code that I've shown so far, our player died just by deleting the player object, but that's really awkward because then you just can't do anything after that. You have to reload the whole app or the web page or whatever it is that you're playing on has to be reloaded in order to actually play again. So we don't want that. We want something a bit more graceful. And so what we want to do is find in your player health script where it is that you kill the player. And that can either be inside an if statement like if current health equals 0, and really this should be less than or equal to. I have bad code here. Right, less than or equal to 0 would be ideal. And you can do it in here, or if you have a kill function, which I have, you can do it inside the kill function. So rather than being a condition that has the same conditions as the kill, it can be an action that we do as part of another action. So our action here is to kill the player. That involves 2 things. One is destroying the game object, and one is changing our scene. So in here, we would want to load a scene. Well, there's a couple things we need in order to do that. So we can put a placeholder comment here. Something like load the game over scene, or whatever kind of scene you want. Now what we would like to do there is we'd like to say something like scene management dot load scene, and then we put something in here like game over scene. The problem is We're going to have a lot of red text if we do that because we've not defined a game over scene and we've not defined what is scene management. We don't know. Right? The reason we don't know what scene management is here is because we've not told this Visual Studio, this script, that it's using scene management in Unity. So it doesn't know what it is. So let's start with that. We're going to go to the very top here and we're going to add a using statement. So we've done this before when we were using UI, the user interface in Unity. We've had to add a using statement. We're going to do the same thing here for scene management. So up at the top of the script, we do using Unity Engine scene management. And then we also want to add a public variable here because then we still have this game over screen, right? I believe this is scene manager anyway. Scene manager, load scene, and then we've got this game over scene, and we don't know what's that. We need a variable for that. We need to define that, and we could just put in here game over and assume we have a scene called game over. But what if we change our mind later? We want this to reload the scene, or what if we want it to go to a different scene? We don't want to hard code. That's what that's called, writing in the text like that. We don't want to hard code what scene we're going to. So instead, we're going to leave this as game over scene as a variable, and we need to go declare the variable up at the top. All right, so we're going to say public string game over scene. And this will mean we can edit this in Unity. Remember, public variables are editable in Unity. So can be edited in Unity. And in Unity, we will say what scene we want this player health script to go to when the player dies. Okay, so save that. Make sure you don't have any squiggly red underlines because I did this in a bit of a weird order, but this is kind of how you would really do things. You wouldn't just instantly know you needed the scene management using statement up there, and you might not instantly know you need a variable. You might go down to your code, start writing, and then realize you need these things, and that's quite common, okay? But just make sure you don't have any squiggly red underlines. Make sure that everything matches the spelling that I have here. All right, then you need to save your script and go back into Unity. So in Unity, we're going to do a few things. So first of all, we need some kind of placeholder scene for losing. And to do that, we're going to just do File, New Scene, New Scene. And we're going to just go ahead and change this camera color to be something horrible so we know that this is the losing scene. We're going to make it red. All right, and then I'm going to save this scene in my scenes folder, and I'm going to call it game over, and that's that scene created. And then in order for this to work, I'm going to go up to File, Build Settings, and I'm going to put my game over scene in the build settings. Now, if you already have a game over scene, you don't need to make this weird red one that I just made. This is just a placeholder if you don't have a game over screen. Please don't leave it as this horrible red color. Like, put some text on there, maybe use an image, make it look a little better. This is horrible, right? But this is just to let us know that we have gone to the game over scene successfully. Okay, once you have a scene ready to go, we're going to go back to level 1. We're going to click on our player, and we're going to go down to your player health, because that's a script we just edited. And you can see there's now a game over scene variable there that we can edit. So we need to put in the name of the scene that we want to load when the player dies. And that's going to be, for me anyway, I called my scene, you can see it here, game over, no spaces, and capital G, capital O. Now, if you named your scene something different, you need to put that in here word for word, exactly the right spelling, exactly the right capitalization and spaces. Okay? So once you've done that, you can run this. What I want to try now is I want to get my player to die. So I'm going to run into this spike. I'm going to go back and run into it again. I'm going to go back and run into it again. And we've got our horrible red screen. So that worked properly. All right. If you have any problems, remember to carefully read your error messages and check the line numbers where the problem is. Don't just give up, right? Make sure you carefully check them. All right. Now, challenges here. You can make it reload the current level, right? So if you look at your player here, you can just put in the current level into your player health. Where are they? Player health. You could put in level 1 and it will reload the current level. Let's just try that, level 1. Okay. And if I then run into this spike, it'll reload the current level instead of the other one. Yeah. So that's great if you are on a later level. So right now, if I go to my other level here and I die, it's not going to work because I haven't told it what scene to load. So it's actually going to give me an error. And you can see that pop up down there. What I could do is I could make level 2 go back to level 1. All right, or I could make it go to the game over screen. So all of that's possible, but just make sure that if you have multiple scenes, you need to set the game over scene on the player in each scene. If you don't do that, your player will get an error message and they'll just disappear if you keep the code that you had here. Okay. Now this is a little bit simple. This is still one hit, one life basically. If you want to add a live system, this is a little more complicated. We're not going to cover it in detail here, but you can do it with what you know so far. It would be somewhat similar, a combination of your health and your score system. And that's because you need it to persist between scene loads, because when you reload a scene, that counts as a scene load. All right, so you want to persist your lives between there. And you also need to reset it somewhere, maybe during the game over screen. It needs to be reset. So it's similar to the score system that we talked about in the last tutorial because of that, okay? And then inside your kill function, instead of just automatically loading game over, instead you'd reduce your lives by 1, and you would then, if the lives were 0 or less than 0, you would at that point, you would go to the new scene, right? So that is kind of how you could expand on that. Now we're going to stop there and we're going to move on to a time limit based situation. So this is going to be something we haven't done. We haven't done a timer. Now we have used timers to use cooldowns on casting or shooting projectiles. We've used timers for a few other things. We haven't used a timer yet for our like to display a time, and we haven't used it for our game as a whole. So this will need a new script, right? And we're kind of going to have a couple different conditions and actions here. First of all, we have the condition when a certain amount of time passes, and the action is to load the scene, right? That's basically what we've been doing so far. But we also, I mean, implicitly, if you have a time before your level ends, you usually want to display that. Not always, but usually. So we also need an update to update the displayed time every time it changes. Now in this case, that's going to be every frame because time is constantly passing. So you can update your text display every frame. And we can do this in a new script. We'll have a timer script for this. So let's do that to start with. We're going to create, and if you don't plan to have time limits in your game, you can skip this section, move on to the next section. Okay, so if you plan to have a time limit in your game, go ahead and right click on your scripts and do create, C# script, and we're going to call it time limit. Okay, now open up time limit. And come on, Visual Studio. And this is what you'll get. So let's go ahead and add, we'll leave those two start and update functions there because we're going to use them. And we're going to add some public variables at the top. Public variables, remember that means they are editable in Unity and by other scripts. So other scripts can see and edit them and access them. Okay, so let's have public float time limit. Now in Unity, we usually measure our time as floats, as decimal points, and it's a number of seconds. So this is a number of seconds. Let's just put this in comments. Number of seconds until the game, the number of seconds the game lasts. This is your time limit. And let's also add public string game over scene, just like we had in our other script. And this is the scene to be loaded when time runs out. Okay? Then we can add some private variables. And these are ones that are not accessible outside of Unity, or in Unity, nor are they accessible by other scripts. They're only within this script. They're kind of just things that you keep track of, like sticky notes for the script, right? Not things that other people are meant to read or use. So let's go ahead and call this private float start time. We'll keep track of when we started. So time when the timer started. And then we can have private text text timer display. Now, why did it do that? It's because I'm using a UI element, and I haven't said that I'm using the UI. So let's go to the top, type in using Unity Engine .ui, and now we are allowed to use that UI element. And this is the display for our timer. Okay, so now inside our start function, let's go ahead and get this timer display. We're going to get it. We're going to assume that our time limit is attached to the text object. So if it's not, then this will not work. So you need to make sure you attach your time limit to the text object. So timer display equals get component text. And this will just go to our current game object that the time limit's attached to and get a particular component from it, and that will be the text component. And so we're going to assume that we have put this script on the text that we're going to be editing. Okay, that makes it nice and easy. And then we're also going to say start time equals time dot time. Sorry, that's capital T and then lowercase t. And this is, let's put some notes here. So this is get our text component so we can edit the text each frame. And this lower one is set the start time for when this object was created. Okay, and this implies that you're going to have a separate time limit for each scene. If you wanted that to not be per scene, a challenge for you then would be to change your start time to static and put another Boolean here for when to reset it, and only reset it in scene 1. And then you can keep that start time between scenes, meaning the player has one big time limit they have to not go over the course of multiple scenes. And that could be quite interesting. It means you'd have to hurry all the way through. But this particular example is showing you if you have a separate time limit in each scene. Okay, so we're going to set when the scene loads, it's going to run the start function, and your start time will be recorded as that moment in time. Okay, so remember that time.time is the current timestamp. So if you think of it, it's in seconds, but if you think of it as hours, if it's 12, well, let's use a different example. If it's 10 a.m., that's 10. And so your start time recorded as 10. And then if later it's 12, you could then say 12 minus 10, that shows you that 2 hours have passed. Okay, so that's kind of what time.time means. It's the current timestamp since the amount of time passed since the game started. So when you first start the game, that'll actually be 0. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at how we're actually going to use this, because this is just setting us up. That's what start does. So in update, we need to calculate, first of all, how much time has actually passed, because we want to compare that to how much time you're allowed to have pass. And that's not what we have. We have start time, we have the current time, we don't know how much time has passed. So let's calculate that inside our update function. Calculate how much time has passed. And that equals, let's say float, time passed equals time.time minus start time. So we're going to take our current time and subtract the time we started to get how much time has passed since we started. And now we can use that. So we want to display it, first of all, display time since start. And we can do that by timer display.text equals time passed.toString. Now we're going to see this might not be exactly what we want. We can change this to make it a little bit nicer. All right, finally, we're going to do check if the time limit has been reached. And we do that by saying if time passed is greater than or equal to time limit. All right, so if, for example, 2 hours have passed and we were only allowed to have a game for 1 hour, then that would be greater than or equal to. Okay, so that's how we're going to check. And if that is the case, so we are out of time, load game over scene. Okay, and then again, we're going to do scene manager dot load scene game over. Let's just and game over scene. And of course, we got this wiggly red line, which tells us we haven't done something. We want to use scene manager. That's part of the scene management. So we need to go up to the top here using Unity Engine .scene management, right? So now we've got that set up. So you should have 2 extra usings at the top for this script, UI and scene management. Okay, so once you have all of that added, we should be able to now save our script and go back to Unity. So in Unity, we now need to create a way to display this time. So let's go ahead and add a game object, UI, and you know what? I'm going to actually copy my score display because it's already about the size that I want. So I'm going to click on my score display, and do Control D to duplicate it. I'm going to immediately change its name so I don't get confused to timer. And then I'm going to double click it so I can move it around. And I'm up here now. I'm going to clear this error. This is from earlier. And I'm going to move this score display to the center of the screen. And I'm also going to change it to be centered. The timer to the center of the screen. And finally, I'm going to, I think we just need to add our timer script to it now. So mine is kind of how I want it. You can set yours up however you like. So then I'm going to drag the time limit onto my timer. And on the right-hand side now you can see that I have a time limit of 0, which is certainly not correct. I'm going to change mine to, let's put it to 5 seconds for now, which is way too fast. But I mean, there is a game called 10 Second Ninja, so you could put it at 10. 5 seconds for now, just so we can quickly see if it works. And then let's type in our game over scene. Remember to be very careful to type it in correctly. Game over, and I'm going to save that and press play. So now if I just sit here, we can see the time going up, right? And it's going to eventually hit 5. Yay, that worked. Now, is that really what we want? Do we want the time to go up or do we want it to go down? That's up to you. Right now mine is counting up. You may want yours to count down. So I'm going to go back to our Visual Studio and I'm going to change it to count down. To do that, instead of showing time passed, I'm going to show time limit. I'm going to put a parenthesis around that time passed. And I'm going to do time limit minus time passed. And if I save that and then go back to Unity, what we should see is it should start at 5 and count down towards 0. And that's how much time we have remaining. And that maybe makes a lot more sense if you have a time limit. So you may want to do that. Now the other thing that is happening here is that you can see it shows a couple decimal points, which may not be what you want. Maybe you don't want it to show any decimal points. It shows 2 by default. Maybe you want it to show none. So if we want to do that, we can easily do it by adding, I know this is weird, but another set of parentheses. And then between these 2 parentheses here, we can do more parentheses and the word int. This is going to change this whole section into an integer, which means no decimal points. And then we're going to have some parentheses on the outside, and it's going to change it into a string. So let's go back to Unity and see what that looks like. We immediately start at 4 and we go down quite quickly. In fact, we go down before, right? So you might like it that way, or if you want it to go up instead, you can use another function here instead called mathf seal to int, and that'll make it go up, right? Seal to int. Seal means sealing. That's why it's spelled so weirdly. Seal to int. Okay? So that'll make it go up. There's a lot of different ways you can manipulate these numbers to kind of get them to display exactly how you want it to. So that'll start at 5 now, and it won't go down to 0 until it actually hits 0. Okay? So there's a lot of things you can muck about with to make that do what you want. But overall, that's basically all there is to it. The other thing you may wish to do is, instead of having a time limit, do what we originally had, have it count up, and you could have your time be your score. So maybe you don't want to have a traditional score, maybe you just want to have the player try to finish the level as quickly as possible. You could use this to do that, and then you'd want to make your time value static so it can save to the next scene, and you'd want to display it in the next scene but not have it count down or up. So you could use a combination of what we learned in the score section to do that. Maybe have it display at the winning game scene or things like that. Okay, so there's a lot you can do with this now that you know how to add a timer to a game. All right, the next thing I wanted to show you is how to do a winning scene when you go through a door. Okay, now this is something I've already basically shown you. So all we're going to do here, this is using the exact same door script that I taught in a tutorial quite some time ago, and it shows you how to go to a new level when you touch a door. It's exactly the same way to load a scene that isn't a level. So for example, a winning screen. You just change the name that is in the door to be that screen. right, so that's nice and easy. What we'll do now is we'll make a placeholder winning screen, or if you already have your winning screen, you can use that. And I'll show you how to use your door script in this way. So I'm going to go ahead and make a file new scene. I'm going to save my level. And my main camera, I'm going to change to be a nice bright green color for my windscreen. Again, placeholder only. Please don't actually do this in your final game. You can do it right now and then replace it later with something nicer. Okay, and I'm going to call it windscreen. All right, and then I'm going to go back to level 1. So actually, I think, well, what I'm going to do first of all in level 1 is turn off my timer, because I do not want to lose after 5 seconds, because I think that's a little bit too harsh. And I'm going to go to level 2, and I'm going to change the door on level 2 to, instead of taking me back to level 1, which is what I had before, I'm going to make that change to the windscreen whenever I hit level 2's door. So I've just gone down, I've selected the door, I've gone down to my door script that I made in the previous tutorial, and instead of putting a level in scene to load, I just put in windscreen. And now if I save that scene and go back to level 1, what I should be able to do is go, I'm going to give myself a coin, just go back down, 1 coin's enough, and I can go to the wind scene. Now I've got an error, and it's because I forgot, it's because I forgot to show you one last step. And we did it before, but just remember, when you add a new scene, you need to go to the build settings and drag in your wind scene there. All right, so I'll try that one more time. Now that I've dragged that in, if I go up, get that coin, and then go back down, we've been taken to the wind screen. So very, very simple to add a windscreen using a door. And it doesn't have to be an actual door. You can use the same script on an item, or on a person, or on just a blank area. You can make an invisible collider that you just enter that area and it takes you to the winning screen. So it doesn't matter if it's an actual door. It can be an invisible door, it can be an item, whatever. Okay, right, so that is the part 3. For part 4, I'm going to show you how to make your score. When you get to a certain score, you win. All right, so maybe it's whenever you get to a certain score that is enough and you win. So maybe 100 or whatever. I'm going to make it quite low so that it's easy to do with my little very simple example scene here, but you can make yours whatever you like. So for this, we're going to have a condition and action just like we always do. And our condition is when a variable, our player's score, is equal to or above a certain value, our action will be to load a scene. In this case, our winning scene. Okay, so it's very, very simple, and it's something we've used that condition and those actions. We've used both of those elsewhere. So I bet you could figure out how to do this on your own. First of all, you need to think about what variable we're tracking. It's the player's score. Do we already track that somewhere? Yes, it's in the score.cs script that we've already made in a previous tutorial. If you're using your own custom code and just came to this tutorial just for the win state, you can use this with your own code. It's absolutely fine. Just check where you're keeping track of your player's score and use that to check if you have reached a certain score and move to the other screen based on that. So I'm going to do that in our score script that we made previously. I'm going to open up that script here, and we are going to add a condition when our player score changes. Now we have set this up in a way that our player score only changes in the add score section here. So we're going to go ahead and in this add score section, just add another bit at the bottom, okay? And we're going to check if the score is bigger than our win score. Well, how are we going to do that if we don't know what our win score is? So we're going to need to add a public variable up here. And this is up at the top of score. We're going to add public int winning score. And we can, we'll not give it a default. We don't know what it's going to be yet. We can set that in Unity because it's public. All right, so then let's go back down here and we're going to check if our score is bigger than our winning score. So we just use an if statement then, just like it says there, if. And bigger than, we're going to use a greater than symbol. That's giving us a hint. So let's say if our score, that score value, if score value is greater than, and we're going to put an equal to as well, and then winning score. So if our score value is bigger than or equal to our winning score, then if so, our score is a winning score. Load win scene. That's our plan. So let's go ahead and do scene manager. You can guess where this is going to go. Load scene. and winning scene. Oh no, we can't do that. We have 2 errors, just like originally. So, scene manager, how do we fix that? We need to tell Visual Studio that we're actually using it. Unity engine, scene management. And then how do we get this winning scene? We need to add a public variable for it. Public string winning scene. And we'll edit that in Unity. With that set, our code should now work. It's no longer red angry underlines. So we can save this and go back to Unity. All right, in Unity, let us then click on our player, which has the score information on it. And we need to now change this winning score to be, I'm going to put it as 7. And I'll explain why. And then our winning scene will be my win screen that I added, a win screen. And make sure you spell everything exactly the same way as your scene file's name, including capital letters and spelling and spaces, everything else. Okay, once you've done that, you should be able to press play. I'm going to move my little player up here. I'm going to collect that. My score's gone to 5. And now if I go and touch this guy, oh, sorry, I need to actually attack this guy. And that would have caused my score to go to 15, which is greater than 7, so it counts. If I change my player to be exactly 15 or exactly 5, it will still work. It will go now whenever I first touch this. Right, there we go. So our greater than or equal to is correct. Okay, so that is all you have to do to get your win states working. Now, this last section is sort of a bonus section, and I'm going to show you how to actually make those win screens a little bit better, a little bit more useful than just sitting there with, maybe a static graphic or a static bit of text on them. You might want to have them display your score, and you might want them to be able to loop back and play again, especially the game over screen, because if you've died, you often want to try again. The win screen, it's still nice to have, but it's not as important. The game over screen, you really need to be able to loop back and start again. So let's go ahead and go to the game over screen. First of all, I'm going to save what I've got so far. And then here in the game over screen, let's go ahead and add some things. So first of all, let's add a text to display the score. So if I go to game object and I can go to UI and text. All right, and if I click on my text, it's here. It's really hard to see. You can see it there. All right, let's make it a lot bigger. It's way too small right now. All right, and let's change the text information, put it at 70. This is because my resolution I'm using here is quite big. I'm going to center the text, center the object, and I'm just going to put some like 9s on there, because what this is going to be is this is going to be our score. And I'm going to use a different color because that is just horrible. White is a bit better. And let's make it just bold. Yeah, it looks a little better. Let's make it even bigger. It's so small. 200, that's fine. So pretend that's, you could add here a text to label it as your score, some text to say you lose, whatever. I'm not going to cover that. That's your design. That's up to you. What I'm showing you is how to do the functionality. Okay, so now you've got a text. You want this to display a number of what your final score was. So you can then add your score object to it. And then onto this, you need to drag the text object itself. You need to drag it into itself here, okay? Because it wants to know where the score display is. It is the score display. Let's go ahead and rename this as well, because you should never leave things just as text. You can rename them as score display. Okay. And we don't want to tick should reset. We don't want to deal with a winning score. And in fact, we should set this as something really, really, really high so it doesn't hit us. And we don't want a winning scene or anything like that. So now if we go back, we're going to save this. I'm going to go back to level 1. I'm going to go ahead and get a coin. So I have some score. Oh no, I've won. Let's just remove that. Make that winning score very high here. We're not going to do that just now. All right, I'm just going to collect this coin. All right, collect my coin. And then I'm gonna shoot this guy too, but I'm gonna go kill myself on this spike because I'm not a very good player. Right? Okay, I'm gonna kill myself on the spike, and it's reloaded the level because we changed how that works. So let's go ahead and fix that. If we go back to our player and check the player health, We're going to change that to say game over. What's our game over screen called? Just game over. Okay, let's try one more time. I'm not going to kill the guy this time. I'm just going to get my thing. So I've got 5 score. And now it's displaying 5 on the final screen. Okay, so that's great. Then let's go ahead and go back to game over. We really want to add a button here because this is not very helpful. Like, okay, you've got a score, but can I do anything? Can I try to get it better? I want to get a better score. How do you do that? All right, let's go ahead and add a button. So I'm going to go up to Game Object, UI, Button. By default, this very, very tiny button has been added. I'm going to move it down to the bottom. Let's put it in the center. Let me use the sprite thing. Let's make it way bigger, right? This is ridiculously small right now. Okay, let's put the center, let's put the text on it to be like huge, right? We could do 100, and we can say try again. Or just try again. This is the button to try again. Right, let's make it even bigger. A little too big. Right, you can muck about with it and make it exactly how you like. Okay, so this is the button to try again. All right, so we want this button to take us to a different scene. Right, now this is going to be another condition action. And our condition here is when the button's pressed, and the action is we want it to take us to a new scene. Thankfully, this is very easy to do. We're going to add a new script. So let's right click on scripts, create, C# script, and we're going to call this script, we'll call this script, let me just check my notes, load scene. Okay, and open up load scene, Visual Studio, and inside here, you're going to add, we're going to just delete everything out of here. We don't need most of this, any of this. We're going to add a single function. Function must be called by us, not automatically by Unity, because it's our own custom function. Now, notice I say automatically by Unity. We're going to still make this one be called by Unity, but it won't be automatic. All right, and we're going to make it a public function because it needed to be called elsewhere. And it's going to be void, no return type, and we're going to call it load target scene. And then in the parentheses here, we're going to add a parameter, string scene, or scene to load. Okay, this is going to be passed in by our button, and we can tell it what scene we want loaded. Then we just need to do scene manager.load scene. We've seen this a million times now. Scene to load. Again, scene manager, angry underline. We need to go up to using top, Unity engine, scene management. Okay, now with that, we can save this. That is all that script needs. It's very simple. This is the action. But in order for our action to happen, we have to have a condition. So our condition is actually in Unity this time, and that's how we're going to call this function. So back in Unity, we're going to drag our load scene onto the button. We really should put a name on this button. We can have it be called restart button, right? And it now has our load scene script on it. And we're going to, on this button, go down to the on click section. And there's a whole list there of stuff it does when it's clicked. Right now, it does nada, nothing. So you're going to click the plus button there, and we're going to have to put in here the object where the action is located. Well, our action is our script, and it's on the restart button, so you drag the restart button into that slot. And then we go down and find our load scene, and we find our load target scene. And then a box appears. We can put in the name of the scene we want. That's the parameters that we're passing to the function. So the scene we want to load here, in this case, I'm going to put level 1. Right, it's going to take me back to level 1. If you have a title screen, you might want to put that in there instead of the first level, because it's a little bit, sometimes a bit unexpected for the player to go back to the level right away, but maybe you want them to. All right, so then let's go ahead and press play here. And if we just click try again, it'll take us back to the first level. Let's go ahead and get a score of something. We'll kill this guy. We'll go down and get ourselves beat up on this thing. And then we've gone here, showing our score, giving us the option to try again. We go back to level 1. Our score resets because that's what I had it do in our score tutorial quite a while ago. If yours doesn't reset, you need to either make sure you've ticked the reset box or put in the logic for making it reset. All that is working now. So this is now a full game. It's a very simple game. My game is very bad. Yours is probably a lot better, right? But it is a full game. We have enemies, we have challenge, we have score, we have a way to win, we have a way to lose. We can restart whenever we've lost. It's a fully featured game that you've made in Unity. First of all, you need to congratulate yourself if you've gotten to this point. It means you've worked very hard using industry level tools, and many of you are beginners. I would assume this is a beginner's tutorial, right? So very well done sticking it out to this point. From now on, you may want to export your game. You may want to build on your game and add to it, and that's fine. There's lots of resources online. There's lots of tutorials for Unity online, and you can also look through the Unity documentation to find a lot of information now that you are maybe past the barest beginner level. You know your way around the interface. You know how a script works, right? You've come a long way. If you want to export and upload this game to share with your friends, family, or even to sell, you can do that. I have a tutorial on how to do that. We'll show you how to use a website called itch.io to show your game. You can upload it there as a web game, or you can upload it as a downloadable game, whatever you like. So that's on my YouTube. You can check that out. If you have any questions or struggled with any part of this tutorial, please do comment and I will be happy to help you out. I've also included the code that I used for this tutorial in the description for this video. Thank you very much for watching all the tutorials I put forward so far. I hope they've been a help. I really want to allow people to make their dream games, to make the things that they have, keep things from just being ideas inside your head, let them actually get out there. And because I'm sure that many people have some amazing ideas that just they haven't been able to bring to fruition yet. So that's a real joy for me. So get out there, make some cool stuff, have a good day, and I'll see you in the future.